There are moments in life when silence becomes heavier than truth. I reached that moment long before today, yet fear kept convincing me to wait just one more day, and then another. Every sunrise gave me another excuse to remain quiet, while every night reminded me that honesty delayed is still a form of dishonesty. So before you decide what I deserve, before you choose whether these words mean anything at all, allow me one gift: the chance to tell you everything without hiding behind polished explanations or carefully chosen excuses. I owe you that much. You've probably noticed that I've changed. You may not have known why, but you must have seen it. The way I sometimes stopped speaking halfway through a sentence. The way I looked at you for a second longer than I should have. The strange silence that settled over me whenever you laughed without trying, as though happiness came to you naturally while I was struggling to remember what genuine happiness even felt like. Those moments were never accidents. They were the places where the truth almost escaped. And today, I'm finally letting it. I came into your life carrying a purpose that had nothing to do with affection. Before we ever shared a conversation, before we exchanged stories or smiles, someone had already decided why I should meet you. There were expectations waiting for me. Plans already written. A path I was supposed to follow without questioning where it might lead. At the beginning, I believed it would be easy. People convince themselves that emotions can be controlled. They imagine the heart behaves like a machine: switch it on when necessary, switch it off when the work is finished. I believed that lie for longer than I'd like to admit. Then I met you. Not the version described by other people. Not the collection of facts I had been given. I met the person hidden inside ordinary moments. The one who thanks strangers without expecting anything in return. The one who smiled with their whole heart instead of just their face. The one who listened as though every person deserved to be understood. It wasn't dramatic. There were no fireworks. No perfect movie scene. Just one ordinary moment that quietly rearranged something inside me. I didn't notice it immediately. Changes that transform your life rarely announce themselves. They arrive softly. Like morning light entering a room while you're still asleep. You don't realize everything has become brighter until you finally open your eyes. That's what happened to me. Without realizing it, I stopped seeing you as someone connected to a task. You became someone I looked forward to seeing. Someone whose voice stayed with me long after our conversations ended. Someone who entered my thoughts without permission and refused to leave. That frightened me. Not because caring is frightening. Because I wasn't supposed to care. Every step closer to you felt like stepping further away from the person I believed I was. I kept telling myself it would pass, that emotions fade if you ignore them long enough. That discipline would eventually silence whatever was beginning to grow inside me. Instead, the opposite happened. Every conversation made the distance harder to maintain. Every smile weakened the walls I had spent years building around myself. Every honest moment with you quietly defeated another piece of the mask I had learned to wear. You never tried to change me. You never asked for anything extraordinary. You simply existed exactly as you were. Sometimes that's enough to change an entire life. People often imagine betrayal begins with cruelty. It doesn't. Sometimes it begins with justification. With small decisions that seem harmless. With quiet promises that you'll fix everything later. You convince yourself that tomorrow will be the day you finally tell the truth. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes another month. Eventually the silence grows so large that speaking feels impossible. That was the prison I built for myself. Not because someone locked me inside. Because I kept choosing the comfort of delay over the courage of honesty. Meanwhile, you trusted me. You spoke openly. You shared thoughts that most people protect from the world. You let me see the parts of yourself that exist only when someone feels safe. And every single time you trusted me, the guilt became heavier. Because trust is never just given. It's placed carefully into another person's hands. You handed yours to me without hesitation. And I knew I hadn't earned it. There was one afternoon I remember more clearly than any other. You weren't pretending everything was okay. You looked exhausted in the quiet way people do when life has been asking too much from them for too long. Still, you smiled. Not because you felt happy. Because you didn't want anyone else carrying your burdens. You spoke honestly for only a few minutes. Nothing dramatic. No grand confession. Just enough truth for me to realize how much strength it must have taken for you to keep standing. While you were speaking, I wasn't thinking about why I had entered your life. I wasn't thinking about instructions. I wasn't thinking about expectations. I was thinking about one impossible question. How could anyone willingly become the reason this person gets hurt? The answer terrified me. Because the person standing closest to you was me. That realization refused to leave me. Long after we said goodbye that day, long after the streets emptied and the noise of the world faded into the background, your words stayed with me. Not because they were extraordinary, but because they were honest. Real honesty has a strange weight to it. It doesn't disappear when a conversation ends. It follows you home. It waits beside your bed. It becomes the last thing you remember before sleep and the first thing you carry into the morning. I began asking myself questions I had spent years avoiding. Who had I become? When did protecting my own comfort become more important than protecting another person's trust? How had I convinced myself that intentions mattered more than consequences? The answers were never kind. Every one of them pointed back to me. I had spent so much of my life believing that distance was strength. If you never became attached, nothing could truly break you. If you never allowed anyone close enough to matter, you could always walk away untouched. That belief had protected me once. Now it was destroying me. Because then there was you. You never tried to pull me closer. You simply welcomed me exactly as I was. There was no pressure. No performance. No expectation that I should become someone different. And somehow, that quiet acceptance became the loudest thing I had ever experienced. For the first time in years, I wanted someone to know the person hidden beneath all the carefully constructed layers. Not the version I showed the world. Not the one who always had the right answer. Not the one who never admitted fear. The real one. The one who carried regrets like stones in his pockets. The one who smiled while fighting battles no one could see. The one who had forgotten what it felt like to be completely genuine with another human being. You made me miss that version of myself. I didn't even realize he was gone until you reminded me he had once existed. There were nights when I sat alone replaying every conversation we had shared. Not searching for mistakes. Searching for proof that at least something between us had been untouched by the lies. Thankfully, there was plenty. Every laugh had been real. Every moment I admired your kindness had been real. Every time I caught myself smiling because of something you said hours earlier, that was real too. Feelings don't follow instructions. Hearts don't recognize contracts. They don't ask permission before changing direction. Mine certainly didn't. It abandoned certainty without asking what the consequences would be. And suddenly, I was living between two completely different worlds. One demanded silence. The other begged for truth. Each morning I promised myself I would finally tell you everything. Each evening I failed. Fear is persuasive. It whispers that waiting one more day is safer. That maybe the truth will somehow become less painful tomorrow. It never does. The longer honesty waits outside the door, the harder it becomes to invite it inside. Still, there was something I couldn't ignore anymore. You remembered me. Not in dramatic ways. In quiet ones. You remembered things I had mentioned only once. A favorite place. A childhood memory. A passing comment I barely thought mattered. Weeks later, you would bring those tiny details back as if they had always deserved a place in your memory. Do you know what that does to someone? It makes them feel seen. Truly seen. Not for what they can offer. Not for what they pretend to be. Simply, seen. I wasn't prepared for that. No one warned me that being understood could be more dangerous than being judged. Because once someone truly sees you, you stop wanting to hide. That's exactly what happened. The mask I had worn for so long became heavier every day. Every conversation required more effort. Every smile felt incomplete because one important truth remained trapped behind it. I wasn't afraid that you would hate me. I believed I deserved that possibility. What frightened me was something else entirely. I was terrified that after hearing the truth, you would look at me with indifference. That the warmth I had slowly come to treasure would disappear forever. There are many kinds of loss. Most people fear rejection. I feared becoming a stranger again. Because somewhere along the way, you had become home without realizing it. Not a place. A feeling. The kind of feeling that makes the world seem quieter simply because one certain person exists inside it. I had never searched for that. I certainly hadn't expected to find it under circumstances built on deception. Life has an unusual sense of irony. Sometimes it places the greatest gift inside the greatest mistake. That contradiction became impossible to live with. Every day I delayed the truth, I felt as though I was borrowing happiness that didn't belong to me. I could smile beside you, laugh beside you, walk beside you. But I couldn't fully stand beside you while carrying a secret that changed everything. Eventually I understood something that changed me forever. Love isn't measured by how desperately someone wants to stay. It's measured by whether they're willing to risk losing everything for the sake of honesty. That realization frightened me, because I finally knew what I had to do. Even if telling the truth meant watching you walk away forever. For a long time, I believed courage meant standing firm under pressure. I thought it belonged to people who never hesitated, people who always knew exactly what to do. I was wrong. Real courage isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with certainty. It comes quietly, usually after you've run out of excuses. It appears in the moment you realize that hiding has become more painful than being judged. That was the place I finally reached. I stopped asking myself how I could protect what we had. Instead, I started asking whether it deserved to exist if it depended on another lie. The answer hurt. But it was honest. Some things cannot survive in darkness. Trust is one of them. Love is another. They both need truth, even when the truth arrives carrying broken pieces. I remember watching you one afternoon while you weren't paying attention. You were speaking with someone else, completely absorbed in the conversation. You had no idea I was looking. There was something peaceful about you. Not perfect. Not untouched by life. Just real. You carried your scars without turning them into your identity. You carried your kindness without asking anyone to notice it. That was the moment I understood something I had been avoiding. I didn't admire you because you were flawless. I admired you because you remained gentle in a world that constantly rewarded people for becoming hard. That kind of strength is rare. It cannot be taught. It simply exists inside certain people. You were one of them. And standing there, I asked myself a question I could no longer escape. If I truly cared about you, how could I continue pretending the answer was simple? I couldn't. Not anymore. Because love built on deception slowly begins to resemble the deception itself. I never wanted that for us. Maybe that's why every smile started carrying sadness behind it. You probably never noticed. Or maybe you did. Maybe there were moments when you looked into my eyes and wondered why they seemed to hold two different stories at once. One story was the one I allowed you to hear. The other was desperately waiting to be spoken. Every day those two stories drifted further apart, until I no longer recognized the person telling them. Do you know what guilt does? It doesn't shout. It whispers. It follows you into ordinary moments. While you're drinking coffee. While you're driving somewhere familiar. While everyone around you believes you're perfectly fine. It quietly reminds you. This isn't who you wanted to become. That sentence became impossible to silence. There were nights when I walked for hours simply because I couldn't bear sitting still with my own thoughts. The streets were empty. The sky stretched endlessly above me. Yet somehow I still felt trapped. Not by anyone else. By my own choices. I kept imagining two different futures. In one, I disappeared from your life before you ever learned the truth. You would remember me kindly. Maybe wonder why I left. Eventually, life would move forward. You would heal. In the other future, I stayed. I confessed everything. I risked losing your trust forever. I risked hearing disappointment in the one voice that had become more important to me than I ever intended. Neither future promised happiness. But only one allowed me to respect the person staring back from the mirror. So I made my decision. Not because I expected forgiveness. Not because I believed love would somehow erase the damage. But because you deserved reality instead of comfort built on fiction. You deserved the choice that my silence had stolen from you. If you decided to leave, at least you would be leaving because you knew the whole story. Not because I edited it into something easier to accept. I think that's what loving someone eventually becomes. Not convincing them to stay. Giving them enough truth to choose freely. Whatever that choice may be. There is something I need you to understand. Every genuine memory we created belongs to us. No one can rewrite them. No one can reduce them to a mistake. When I laughed with you, I wasn't pretending. When your happiness quietly became my own, that wasn't planned. When your sadness settled inside my chest as though it belonged there, no one instructed me to feel that. Those moments came from the part of me that existed long before fear took control. That part never lied to you. Only the frightened part did. The part that believed honesty always ended in loss. Now I know something different. Sometimes loss begins the moment we stop telling the truth. And I had already been losing myself long before I admitted it. You changed that. Not by rescuing me. Not by fixing me. Simply by showing me what authenticity looked like. You reminded me that being fully known is frightening, but pretending forever is even more exhausting. For that alone, I will always be grateful. Because meeting you forced me to become someone I should have been years ago. Someone willing to stand in front of another human being, without a mask. Without excuses. Without anywhere left to hide. And now, there is nothing left between us except the truth. No carefully rehearsed explanations. No stories shaped to make me look better. No shield to hide behind. Just a heart that finally became tired of carrying two different lives. I often wonder what would have happened if our first meeting had been built on honesty instead of purpose. Maybe we still would have laughed at the same things. Maybe we still would have found comfort in the same quiet moments. Maybe this story would have unfolded exactly as it did, only without the weight that has followed me every step of the way. I'll never know. Some questions belong to another version of life, the one we never had the chance to live. For a long time, I blamed circumstances. Then I blamed timing. Then I blamed the people who set everything in motion. Eventually, I ran out of people to blame. The only name left was my own. That realization was painful. But strangely, it was also freeing. Because once you accept responsibility, you stop wasting energy searching for excuses. You begin searching for change instead. And you changed me. Not because you asked me to. Not because you expected anything from me. Simply because your presence made pretending impossible. You reminded me that kindness is not weakness. That honesty is not something reserved for perfect people. It's something imperfect people choose, even when it costs them everything. If I could return to the beginning, I wouldn't choose a different destination. I would choose a different beginning. I would walk toward you with nothing hidden. No secret waiting behind my smile. No invisible wall standing between every word we shared. Just my real name, my real heart, and the courage I found far too late. I know I cannot rewrite yesterday. Life doesn't hand us blank pages. It asks us to continue writing beneath the mistakes already made. Maybe that's what redemption really is. Not erasing the past. Living honestly enough that it no longer controls the future. If this confession changes the way you see me, I understand. If your trust never returns, I understand that too. Trust is fragile. Once broken, it asks for patience, not promises. I have no right to demand forgiveness. Forgiveness is a gift. Never an obligation. The only thing I can offer is the person standing before you now. No performance. No agenda. No hidden purpose. Just someone who finally learned that love without truth is only an illusion wearing beautiful clothes. You once told me that people reveal themselves through the smallest choices. I didn't fully understand what you meant then. I do now. Because every small choice eventually became the person I was becoming. Every delayed confession. Every avoided conversation. Every moment I chose silence over honesty. They built someone I no longer wanted to be. So today, I make a different choice. Not because it guarantees a happy ending. Because it guarantees a truthful one. Maybe that's enough. Maybe real love has never been about perfect timing. Maybe it has always been about becoming brave enough to be completely seen. If that's true, then meeting you gave me something greater than happiness. It gave me clarity. You taught me that being understood is one of the rarest gifts a person can receive. You taught me that genuine connection isn't created through impressive words. It's built through consistency, through honesty, through showing up exactly as you are. And because of you, I finally know who I want to be. Whether you remain part of my journey or not, that lesson will stay with me for the rest of my life. One day, years from now, I may forget the dates. I may forget the places where we met. I may even forget the exact conversations that once meant everything. But I'll never forget how you changed the direction of my life without ever trying to. Some people leave footprints. You left a compass. Whenever I lose my way, I'll remember the person who quietly reminded me that the shortest road to another heart is honesty. So this is where my silence ends. Not with certainty. Not with expectations. Only with hope. Hope that one day, when you remember me, you won't remember the man who arrived carrying hidden intentions. You'll remember the man who finally found the courage to lay them down. Because in the end, the greatest thing you ever gave me wasn't your affection. It was the chance to become someone worthy of it. And if this is the last thing I ever get to tell you, then let it be this. Meeting you didn't simply change my story. It changed me. And for the first time in a very long time, that feels like the most honest sentence I have ever spoken. The end.